In her book Belonging, Bell Hooks writes, "The sound of the train comforts me now as it did then, for I know I have come home. I have returned to the world of my childhood, the world in which I first sowed the seeds of my being and becoming, a seeker on the path, the contemplative intellectual choosing solitude, choosing ideas, choosing critical thinking. Here in my native place I embrace the circularity of the sacred, that where I begin is also where I will end. I belong here." I chose to begin this story with these words for two reasons. Firstly, I sit here riding on a train, a 47-hour journey across the northern United States, allowing ample time for pondering the decades since I first moved here. Secondly, Hooks's quote reminded me of the circularity of beginnings and endings. This is the first story for a terminal degree. This story is one of many stories. I will start here, but I will end here also, returning to the notion of belonging, gathering students' stories of belonging along the way. So let us begin. I was born a traveller. My family moved at roughly 7-year intervals throughout my life, first leaving Singapore, then Australia, then Belgium, until I landed in the United States in my teens. Even when we were not moving, we travelled, an annual jaunt to see family in Melbourne, stopping on various continents along the way. My father's interpretation of travel is an intensely paced obstacle course of sights and scenery. He doesn't appear to derive personal pleasure from travel. It is more an army-style, up at 6, 100 miles in the car, acquisition of goals type travel. Hollywood sign California? Check. Hoover Dam, Nevada? Check. The Painted Desert, Arizona? Check. It's only 3 p.m., on we push. But these marathons aside, it was a sharp lesson to learn at 12 that while you are clocking miles across Zimbabwe in a station wagon, life in the classroom and community goes on without you. Classes were missed, friendships reformed. The ambulatory aspect of my personality seemed to be present early. As a young reader, I loved stories of boarding school. I loved stories of children that swapped parents accidentally or on purpose. I loved the idea of camp. I was taken with books about children from London being shipped to the countryside to live with strangers during World War II. There is a theme here. I also loved to plan to run away. The furthest I got was 2 hours spent in the local park in the pouring rain before my mother walked across the street, found me under the slide, and took me home. I did not actually want to run away. I wanted adventure. This is less a reflection on the way I felt about my family and more a reflection on how I feel about travel. Later in life, I left a great job and a nice husband to live in Kenya. The theme continues. Bell Hooks writes of community members she calls walkers, individuals covering miles in a day but always walking a known terrain, leaving, always coming back to the known reality. My terrain is always unknown. I believe the adage change is as good as a holiday. Change, new places, this makes my heart beat faster, makes my body stir. On a recent holiday, we were stuck in horrendous traffic. All around us were lines of vehicles, cars packed to the seams with people and possessions, headed south into Spain for what I imagined would be a perfect month of travel. I was agitated. While we had a lovely week, we were headed to Barcelona to fly home the next day. I wanted more. I wanted to be headed off with a handful of sundresses, a map, and a box of books. You think I digress, but we will revisit this. This is what moves me. My unabashed love for people and places is central to my motivation and engagement as an educator, as a student, as a scholar, as a writer. This drive underlies my work. As an adult, I wonder, where do I belong? How do I write about belonging if I don't belong anywhere? And I conclude that for me, I don't belong to places, but to people. I belong to my mother and sister. I belong to my father and brother. I belong to some friends, but not others. My niece at 4 called her family her special people. My special people are my harbours, my ports of call. They are my tracks which keep me headed in the right direction. They are my station, my homecoming. They stay put while I orbit. They are consistent. They are always there. I am sure of them. As an adult, I wonder, where do I belong? How do I write about belonging if I don't belong anywhere? And I conclude that for me, I belong comfortably in my skin. I belong in my whiteness and all that means. I belong in my femininity and all that means. I belong in this world, all of it, which is why I think all children are important. All students should have an opportunity for education, not just those that look like me, speak like me, and act like me.
All children are a part of the global community where I belong.
The theme of belonging is central to education, for belonging encapsulates life's big questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? What is my purpose in this life? What is my purpose in this place? These are questions we all revisit in various ways in schools, in places of worship, in casual conversation, in therapy. These are questions we need to help students consider as they engage in their own schooling. If these questions are pondered, then we can begin to ask of our education, how does this relate to me? Why should I know this? How can this expand what I currently know to include new information? My train moves into Montana now. Bumps have appeared in the previously flat landscape. These soon will become hills and mountains. Apt, I think, for as we begin to seriously trouble notions of belonging and of education in the current socio-political climate, the terrain is not smooth, the journey not direct.